Abhishek ji, your voice is not audible. If you can just check on your microphone once again. Thank you.
3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Uh, yeah, your microphone is on mute, Abhishek. Okay, okay.
Am I audible now?
Yes, Abhishek ji, you are perfectly audible now. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all on behalf of Red Lantern Analytica for a discussion on India, Indo-Greek Armenian strategic cooperation to tackle caliphate design. We have seen that how this caliphate design have become a problem for all the countries with a shared uh, value of democracy, and so we have experts from all the three countries to discuss this. We have Leonidas as first Greek ambassador to Armenia. We have Professor and John M. Nomikos, Director, Research Institute for European and American Studies. We have Vaharam, Founder and Board Chairman, Network State. We have Dr. Swasti Rao, Associate Fellow at uh, Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. We have Avjit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow at Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, India. We have Michael, a British American journalist, and Ujay Bulut, a journalist and political analyst. So all of these experts will be discussing on the topic. And with us, we also have moderator Paul, who is editor of Greek City Times. He has been constantly contributing his journalistic writing in various print and online forums such as Global Research, The Week India, Beyond News, Antiwar.com, Swaraj, and many more. So welcome you all, and we also thank the other institutes who have collaborated with us, the Research Institute for European and American Studies, Network State, and Pericles Institute. We welcome you all, and thanks to everyone for joining this session. So I do not have Jagannathan sir has joined. Now I
Jagannathan sir
introduce
has.
Hi Abhishek. Hello everyone.
hello Dr. Jagannathan. Dr.
Yeah.
Jagannathan is assistant professor and head of Department of National Security Studies, a school of National Security, Central University of Jammu. He has contributed in many digital and print forum and is also a mentor of Red Lantern Analytica. So over to Jagannathan sir. He will be introducing the topic for us. So Jagannathan sir, we welcome you.
Thank you Abhishek, and thank you Red Lantern Analytica for this opportunity. And on behalf of RLA, I once again welcome all the guests who have joined from abroad and also the from India for the interesting webinar on Indo-Greek Armenia strategic cooperation on to deal with the caliphate designs. Uh, to begin with, sort of this theme is very pertinent. The triangular relationship between India, Greek, and Armenia is at a time when we are witnessing an unprecedented global order and there are uncertainty. Uh, what in the last 6 7 months, the post-Ukraine Russia war, we have been hearing from the most of uh, the, the articles on written on this global world order that there's no mention about terrorism. In fact, the recent U.S. document, the security strategy document, or even this defense strategy document, does not even have a strong mention about the terrorism or Islamic terrorism. That doesn't mean that the terrorism has entered. The design has gone with the killing of the new the Al Qaeda leader Zawahiri. So the caliphate design, it has its genesis, as we all know, and it is coming in a sort of a new form. We call it the digital, even in the digital platform, we call it the digital caliphate, which is very much vibrant, very much vibrant there, and they exploiting the dark net and to sort of perpetuate their idea of establishing the caliphate. And India have been a victim of the global terrorism, particularly the Islamic terrorism, has also going through a different set of new trends. Particularly the Indian southern states are large number of the youths have been attracted to the new design, the caliphate design. So to address this design, it is pertinent to sort of forge a global cooperation to keep this fight against the so-called the caliphate or the Islamic design. So that's the main. Coming back to the relevance or the significance of the Greek Armenia cooperation with the strategic cooperation with Greek Armenia, we have over the period we have developed a strong, robust cooperations with Greece as well as Armenia, and even our external affairs minister has also hinted that we will move towards a strong strategic cooperation. I think the terrorism is going to be an important thing. And recently, we have also had signed an extradition agreement with the Armenia to sort of extradite the offenders. So it's an extension of the global fight against terrorism. Although the international community, particularly the Western community, is preoccupied with the Ukraine and Russian conflict. And in this context, I think that we have today a galaxy of eminent experts on this topic from home and also from abroad, and to deliberate on these issues, and also to sort of formulate the common strategy to fight against the caliphate design. With these remarks, once again, I think I'm sure that this initiative is just a beginning to have go, and it will continue and to sustain for the future cooperation. And with these remarks, once again, I welcome you all and look forward to hearing all of you. Thank you very much.
Now I invite
Wonderful.
Paul to, thank you, everyone. Now I invite Paul to take over the discussion, and we hope something positive will come from the discussion to enhance the strategic cooperation between India, Armenia, and Greece. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you for the introduction, Professor Jagannathan. For those with us today, thank you for joining us in what will certainly be an action-packed discussion on Indo-Greek Armenian strategic cooperation to tackle caliphate designs. We enter a dangerous period where the world system is changing with the emergence of several great powers, rather than the previous unipolar and bipolar system. This emboldens countries like Turkey, Pakistan, and Azerbaijan to challenge the current system to promote their interests and agenda, which has reflections of a neo-caliphate. But despite these modern geopolitical systems, these three countries are also centuries-old enemies, and it is specifically with this threat that India, Greece, and Armenia must work together. But you are not here to hear me, and rather you want to hear our many esteemed speakers, who will each be given 10 minutes. I first pass the floor to Mr. Leonidas Chrysantopoulos, the first Greek ambassador to Armenia when it achieved its independence with the collapse of the Soviet Union. He is also the vice president of the Greek Armenian Friendship Association. Thank you, Mr. Leonidas.
Thank you, Mr. Adonopoulos. And allow me at the outset to express my appreciation to Red Lantern Analytica and to Mr. Abhishek Ranjan for inviting me to participate at this webinar and for organizing it along with RIEAS and Pericles Institute and Network State. I was pondering when I got the title of the discussion. What exactly do we mean with the caliphate? Is it the terrorist organizations that were created by Al-Qaeda? Because the caliphate also means that it is the desire of many countries to recreate the power and the glory of Sunni Islam and expand Islam and Sharia law worldwide. So my approach to this issue would be, first of all, to go to focus on cultural diplomacy, and secondly, on traditional diplomacy. I will explain exactly what I mean. What do Armenia, Greece, and India have in common? They're ancient civilizations. They're ancient civilizations, and during that time, these civilizations were in contact among themselves. I mean, so that's why I believe that emphasis should be given to the revitalization of the Forum of Ancient Civilizations, which is a Greek initiative in which the three participate, while some common enemies do not. Countries participate in the forum are Armenia, Bolivia, China, Egypt, Greece, Italy, India, Iran, Iraq, Mexico, and Peru. The first ministerial meeting of the forum took place in Athens on April 24, 2017, and the Athens Declaration on the founding of the forum, which for short is ACF Forum, was adopted. The ACF assists member countries to organically provide traditional culture with modern civilization, improve the cultural soft power of various countries, promote the development of politics, society, people's livelihood, and economy, and further enhance the country's advantage in the competition of comprehensive national strength, which is of great significance in maintaining the peaceful and stable development of the region, and even the World Declaration of Tiwanaku. This was a second declaration that came out at the second meeting in Bolivia, 13 of July 2018, decided, among other things, to create a permanent platform of cultural cooperation, aiming to promote historical research with emphasis on the value and contribution of ancient civilizations to humanity. Also, possible impediments should be identified in promoting and protecting cultural rights. The declaration also underlines that the recognition and promotion of ancient civilizations that enhance the dialogue between humanity in this multicultural world should be recognized. Now, there was a third meeting that was held in Beijing, China, and after that, the whole forum stopped functioning. I mean, there was a change of government in Greece, but there was not any follow-up to the decisions that were taken. I personally believe, and here I would like to ask perhaps Armenia or India could attempt to revitalize this forum, since the present Greek government is not interested in doing. Because I believe that all the countries participating in this forum could also provide a means of protecting the cultural goods of these civilizations from destruction. I mean, we have the cases of what's happening in Artsakh now, where many cultural goods are being destroyed by the Azerbaijani forces. And also, we had these cases in Syria and in Iraq, and in Afghanistan also, where many cultural pieces of cultural art were destroyed by those people who wanted to create a caliphate. So I would give a focus on that area, the cultural area, because there it's something that already exists and we could continue working on it. Now, also, we should have trilateral political meetings on all levels, should be held every 6 months or when necessary. This trilateral cooperation should include economic and military cooperation, with a possibility of even holding trilateral military exercises. Now, eventual extension of this cooperation with China, and I know that the problems that some countries have with China should not be excluded, mainly because of the issues that Beijing has with its Muslim minority, which automatically, and this has not been, I know this from personal experience from my time that I was in Beijing, which automatically makes this country not to be so much in favor of Muslim countries, who also create issues of human rights, etc., concerning the Muslim minority and not other issues. So this, I think, and the trilateral cooperation, this can be done within the framework of the United Nations during the General Assembly. I mean, we have such a thing going between Greece, Cyprus, and Armenia now, where we had the 3 ministers of foreign affairs that met on the margin of the General Assembly of the United Nations. And whenever possible, they have these trilateral meetings in Cyprus, Greece, or in Yerevan. So it's something that functions, and there we could go into the details of facing in practical ways the dangers that are created by the caliphate supporting countries, which also includes Turkey here. I have to mention this because there was an idea, a little, I mean, I don't know if it has been terminated, this idea of working towards an Islamic country, that Turkey becomes an Islamic country, perhaps even going to the extent of creating a caliphate. But that is something that I'm not very sure about it. But I insist that we should, the first movement that should be made is the revitalization of the Forum of Ancient Civilizations. And that's going to help us a lot. And we can find practical means of going along, and particularly to secure and to safeguard the cultural heritage of our three countries, and not only of our three countries, but of most of the countries participating in this Forum of Civilization. Having said this, I stop here. I wanted to keep the time limit, and I thank you very much.
This is the reality. If you're some fat dude and you just had a heart attack and I don't really know you,
we apologize.
if you're a friend, if you're my friend, you can't be a pussy. Go ahead, a heart attack. Get the fuck up. What's wrong with you?
We apologize for that. Moving forward, though, I thank former Ambassador Chrysanthopoulos, who stressed the cultural exchanges through the Forum of Ancient Civilizations, which should be taken under the responsibility of Armenia or India, since in his view, the current Greek government is not interested in revitalizing it. He also stresses this to protect cultural heritage, especially as Azerbaijan is currently in the midst of destroying indigenous Armenian heritage in the occupied areas of Nagorno-Karabakh. On that note, I introduce us to our next speaker, Professor John Nomikos, who is the Director of the Research Institute for European and American Studies and Chairman of the European Intelligence Academy. Today, he will speak about how Greece and Cyprus can strengthen security cooperation with India and Armenia based on his own direct experiences. So on that note, I welcome Mr. John Nomikos. Perhaps a little bit of technical help in unmuting Mr. John Nomikos. If you can hear Professor Nomikos, please unmute if you're able to. Is anyone from the technical department able to help Professor Nomikos?
Professor Nomikos, if you can hear me, kindly try to unmute yourself. You are still muted. Yeah, we can momentarily see your video over there, but your voice is not audible. You are being shown mute right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
perfect.
we can hear
Yes.
you.
Yeah, okay.
Please continue.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry that I did mute earlier. I'm traveling right now. I'm going to the Balkans in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
So your audio has again gone
Paul, you're
muted.
muted. Paul, you're muted.
Yes, kindly unmute yourself first.
Okay, so Mr. Nomikos, we're going to move ahead to our next speaker, and then we'll introduce you in the next slot. So we'll move ahead to, I'll introduce you to our next speaker, which is Vadim, who does not need much of an introduction. And if he does, then he's the founder and board chairman of Network State, which has been extremely active in promoting and pushing for Armenian interests and causes. He's an international relations and genocide scholar and a startup founder and climate reality leader who was personally trained by former US President Al Gore. He'll discuss the critical matter of Diaspora cooperation. So allow me to introduce you once again to Mr. Ayvazian. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Paul, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for this webinar. I'm also very happy to see Network State people here. His Excellency Leonidas, the ambassador, is here. Also in the Network State, Michael from London is here. So it's very nice to see that the networking gives some outcomes, results. Before moving forward to the diaspora cooperation, just want to mention that I do agree with Leonidas about this forum on ancient civilizations, and we just send a message to the forum because there was a conference held in Baghdad these days on this topic, and we send a message on behalf of the Network State and on behalf of the Armenian intelligentsia. So this is just for the forum on ancient civilizations. Since I am in the Network State, I do believe that in order to tackle the caliphate designs and in general anti-ancient civilizational politics and policies, we do need to institutionalize a networking between the three of us. That means that we need to do this on both, diplomatic levels, on both government level and non-governmental levels. And here I would also include the third, pillar, which is diaspora levels. We know that the Armenians are present in almost 100 countries, and I would say the same about Indians and Greeks too. So if we go deep into the real nitty-gritty of the data, they will find this out. So basically, what I would suggest is, in order to tackle this Pakistan, Turkey, Azerbaijan axis and their evil marriage against the ancient civilizations like India, Greece, and Armenia are, and if we put it bluntly, against the Indo-European civilization, then we do need to institutionalize this networking between the three countries and the three people. So first thing is, of course, on government level, so that the governments needs to act urgently and precisely. The second is on public diplomacy level, like forum on ancient civilizations, and the third thing is on diaspora cooperation level. What I would suggest here, I would jump and suggest that we do need to create a board of diasporas, Indian, Greek, and Armenian diasporas, where this board, I mean, with its communities, I mean, involved everywhere from the USA and Canada to Russia and Australia. So this board needs to create a big database and departments, and also create a special action plan how to tackle, I mean, these evil marriage, I mean, policies. I call Pakistan, Turkey, and Azerbaijan as a product of marriage. For that, this action plan needs to include that this board needs to process the data that we get from everywhere, from all parts of the world. I mean, so that we are informed well, and then after processing it, then we should jump to policy making. How to have a joint roadmap of cooperation. For example, just giving a very maybe mundane, very banal example, just something like this. The Armenian community in for example, in Madrid, right, can get informed by the Indian community in Madrid that the Grey Wolves, the Turkish, I mean, organization, terrorist organization, Grey Wolves, are present here. They are doing this. Then the Armenians would share details in, I don't know, in Los Angeles, with the Indian community. The Pakistanis are doing this. So this information sharing will definitely help us, I mean, feel safer, protected, and also try to include these dialogue practices, so that we are informed, we have, I mean, database, we have, I mean, the action plan, we feel safer, and we feel stronger. And if you feel stronger, then you take initiative. You are no more reactive, but you are proactive. So being proactive, you definitely also try to engage those guys too. I mean, these, I don't know, Pakistanis, Turks, Azeris, who have been on the wrong path. So you definitely, I mean, with this, I mean, big organizational establishment, try to bring them back on the right path. So this is something that I would suggest. I would personally be very happy to sit in that board of this diasporas, I mean, India, Greece, Armenia. And we at the network state will be very happy to move forward with actual steps of forming that board. If there will be any other questions, I would be very happy to answer. And we are very interested in, as ancient civilizations, I mean, India, Greece, Armenia, we think in the network state that we have the duty to bring the world to the right path, which is to bring people to dialogue. And the network states, one of the key goals of the network state is to create that platform for dialogue for different people and different civilizations. And these diasporas, I mean, Greek, Armenian, and Indian diasporas, have a key role to play there. Thank you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And any questions you do have, certainly hold on to them, and we're going to ask them at the end, because it's a critical issue that our three diasporas do work collectively towards these threats. Thank you, Mr. Varam, who did stress that our three countries needed what he called institutionalized networking. And this is specifically to counter Turkey, Pakistan, and Azerbaijan, which he described as an evil marriage against ancient civilizations. He also explained a special action plan for the diaspora to be proactive to threats rather than reactive, which is, of course, of critical importance. I pass us on to our next speaker, and I welcome Mr. Abhijit Mitras, who is a Senior Fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies in New Delhi.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to take this off where Ambassador Chrysantopoulos and Vahram left off. See, we have to first understand what binds us together and what separates us. And to that, we have to realize who exactly, when we said countering the caliphate, who exactly, what is the nature of this caliphate threat that we're facing? And in that, what Vahram raised, specifically the nexus between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Pakistan becomes very important. Now, the first thing we need to understand is what connects these three countries together. I mean, they're not really geographically linked. Technically, they're not even culturally linked, at least Pakistan isn't, except maybe precious use of the name Khan for everything. I mean, every second person you meet in Pakistan is called Khan, Shamshad Khan or Hussein Khan or something like that. So what really connects all of them? First, politically, it's unresolved borders and revanchism, right? And a sort of ethnic claim to the border, even when a border, so for example, between Greece and Turkey, the border is resolved, but there's still the unresolved border of Cyprus, which is then based on ethnicity. Now, I've been to both North and South Cyprus, and except for the linguistic divide, there doesn't seem to be a ethnic divide. If you actually go to the Turkic heartlands, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, you see what actual Turks look like. Now, I've toured around Turkey a lot. I've been to Azerbaijan, and I've not yet been to Pakistan. And I can tell you none of them actually look like Turks. So, this kind of bringing in a ethnic dimension to it of what are fundamentally converted populations, you see this sort of usage of religion, which then once it weakens becomes language and then goes back to religion, becoming very important. Because at one level, they believe that religion is a sort of binder to get away from all their internal disputes. Erdogan, for example, wins a lot of votes in rural Anatolia, as opposed to not being very popular in, say, urban Istanbul. And he uses religion to sort of whip up people where he can't deliver. In Pakistan, you've seen religion. I mean, they were formed on the basis of religion, but they lost Bangladesh. And they're facing a huge problem with the Pashtuns, and they still use religion to cover it up. So religion, Azerbaijan, again, lots of political problems at home, effectively a horrible dictatorship. What's one way of getting rid of problems is to go back to that classic early 20th century European construct: create a war, create a little diversion out there, and so get back to Artsakh, which is entirely Armenian. I mean, there's not many Turks living there at all. So you have this issue which connects the fundamental lack of political stability, or if there is political stability, there's great political problem at home. And you decide to use land and religion as a sort of, I won't say bogeyman, but, a kind of alam. How do you translate alam into English? I don't know. A banner to kind of unite and overcome problems. The second is what we see. The Turks and the Azeris very clearly have an Oghuz Turkic language. The problem is Pakistan does not, except that the name of the language is Urdu, which is what army in Turkic, or from which you get horde. You don't really have Pakistani speaking much Turkic. There is a lot of Persian influence in it, but definitely not Turkic. So of late, they've rediscovered their Turkicness. And I think Turkey is going to get a taste of what Saudi Arabia and Persia got in the last 50 years, when the Shah of Iran was very powerful and was getting F-14s and God knows what not from America. All the Pakistanis were convinced that they were Persians, that they were descended from the Shah and Shahs of Persia, and would start, civilized people would speak Persian at home. Then, for about 20 years after the Afghan jihad started and the Shia-Sunni split kind of happened, they all decided that they were Arabs. And you started seeing car labels in Pakistan, instead of calling it Pakistan because there's no P in Arabic, become Al-Pakistan. Then, of course, now they've, ever since Ertugrul happened, Ertugrul and all the follow-on series, they've decided that they're Turks, and they got a military Mehter band to perform, well, the Ertugrul theme song during their National Day celebrations. So, you know, if identity is fluid, then Pakistan is the classic case of a fluid identity sort of thing. Now, these are the differences between them. What connects them is the use of Sunni terrorism. Pakistan has perfected this, and Turkey seems to have taken on the template. Azerbaijan is slightly different but similar. I'll get to that later. Pakistan has this thing that it has one terrorist group for every denomination. There's a Shia terrorist group, there's a Hanafi terrorist group, there's a Salafi terrorist group. Every single school has its own little terrorist group and becomes a terrorist menagerie. Turkey, ever since Syria, and you could argue even before that, has been adopting this sort of sub-state model of terrorism, using religion to interfere in Syria and, of course, now in other places as well. And particularly nasty kinds of terrorists. And you see what's happening in Anatolia is the beginning of what you see in Pakistan. Pakistan is a lot more unsafe. If you go to Islamabad, you are actually checked. Your cars are checked. Paul, you were in Delhi some time back, and you'll remember, you know, every time you go into your hotel, there's a cursory check of the car. The boot is opened, and that's about it. Nobody's actually checking you because there's no real security threat out here. It's more a drama for you to believe, for you to live in a placebo that you're very secure. In Pakistan, these threats are very serious. This menagerie of terrorists they created is going to keep them up, and it's invariably going to happen in Turkey as well. The question is, how long are you willing to or have the ability to keep exporting that terror? And this is where the first lesson for Azerbaijan, Greece, and India comes about: staying power. You have to be willing to absorb threat after threat after threat, bomb after bomb after bomb, massacre after massacre after massacre, and not flinch even a bit. Now, why can't we do something about it? Because all these countries, except Azerbaijan maybe, live under a nuclear umbrella. Turkey has a NATO nuclear umbrella guarding it. Pakistan, of course, has its own nuclear weapons. Azerbaijan is different. Remember, Azerbaijan is about 85% Shia. But depending on your point of view, either something good that the Soviets did or something bad that the Soviets did, it was that they completely eliminated any knowledge of religion as it existed from large parts of the Soviet Union. I think I've told you about when I was in the madrasa of Timur Tamerlane's grandson in Bukhara. And this, because I was wearing kurta pajama, the muezzin, I don't know if he was the muezzin or he was a teacher at the madrasa, he calls me in and offers me vodka inside a religious institution. So they managed to eliminate a lot of religion out there. But what's happened, the negative effect in Azerbaijan is that the Shia sort of connect isn't there, and they're adopting a lot of Sunni terrorism. You saw during the recent aggression against Artsakh how they were getting people, terrorists were literally being bussed in, Sunni terrorists were being bussed in or flown in from northern Syria, as well as from across the border in Turkey, into the area. They were beheading, torturing and beheading. I think we've all seen those torture and beheading videos of Artsakh residents and Artsakh soldiers, etc., etc. If you've not seen them, yes, Twitter used to censor them, but there are lots of Telegram channels where they would actually be celebrating all of this. So there is this encouragement, very singularly, of Sunni extremism happening across all three regions. And it is a multifaceted Sunni extremism because you can't put your finger on any one point. How do we deal with that? Especially because they live behind a nuclear umbrella. I'm going to wrap up very soon. Sorry, just 2 more minutes. What our basic thing now is Turkey, Pakistan would very much like to create this sort of brothers of steel, you know, Ertugrul and his brothers kind of alliance. Turkey doesn't seem to be very interested in it. Neither does Azerbaijan. they are trying, because remember, the Turkey-Pakistan friendship, which has never really blossomed beyond a certain point, it's minimized by the tyranny of geography, will be the real determinant of if India, Armenia, and Greece start working together. And, unfortunately, being an Indian, I can tell you that unless our Ministry of Foreign Affairs gets a right royal kick up the ass, they're really not going to work too much on this. And they generally tend to be extremely passive. Their contacts with Turkey tend to be a lot more than with Greece. There is a school of thought here, a sort of genocide negation school of thought, which is all pervasive in government, because remember, the humanities are dominated by the left, and there is a sort of narrative about it. So India would, I totally appreciate and agree with what Bahram said. The question in India, at least, is the practicality of that Armenian, Greek, and Indian axis forming in some formal way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of that insight. Abji posed a question of what connects Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Pakistan, and provided, I would say, a realist lens towards looking at this axis. He lists unresolved borders as well as a question of ethnic identity and Sunni terrorism as issues that unites them together, which may appear at first as a bit of a contradiction considering Azerbaijan is a Shia country. However, as he highlighted, there were Sunni terrorists from Syria that were flown in to fight against the Armenians. He also expressed some skepticism towards the state structures in bringing our countries closer together, which just means that we as citizens in whichever field we're in, whether it be economics or culture or academia, whatever it may be, must become closer together. On that note, I'll introduce us again to Professor Nomikos, who will reflect on his own experiences on being able to bring our countries together to oppose this forming axis. Thank you, Professor Nomikos.
Thank you very much for everybody. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I was just traveling from Bosnia, Herzegovina through Serbia, and now I'm available to talk because my connection was not very good. Now I'm okay. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you very much for the invitation, Paul, and everybody. And I had the opportunity to listen to some of the speeches, especially, the ambassador, and the introduction too. Okay, just to say to you very briefly that the situation in the Balkan, Bosnia, and Kosovo is not very good right now. We might we might have some unpleasant news in the coming days, maybe next week. But anyway, today we're talking about India, Armenia, of course, and Greece. And my comments are going to focus on Cyprus and Greece and India security collaboration. I had the opportunity to be in India several times, especially in the Jaipur. It's a country that I highly respect. And I'm very grateful about Paul that he invited me to have this excellent, forum today. Well, it's quite important, first of all, to concentrate on the collaboration, security collaboration between India, Greece, and Cyprus. Never forget, Cyprus is a very important country, a member, of the European Union, geographically, strategically, as well as Greece. So India is a country that can offer a lot to the Eastern Mediterranean security. And I'm not talking only about the counterbalancing the Pakistani, of course, Turkish strategic collaboration, especially on the security and intelligence collaboration. The point is that India is one of the few democratic countries with a huge strategic power, and I think it's about time to arrive in the Eastern Mediterranean and be involved on the NLG, especially on the Cyprus and Greece, as well as play a very significant role in the European Union. As you know, Russia is already here, right? Very heavily, of course. And today they said they would like to make some more active role in Libya. As well, China decided to be involved in Libya too, but China, as you know, is already involved in Africa since 1970, in the Cold War era. But just going back to my comment, I think Cyprus and and Greece and India Navy must be more active here. All right, and as we know, General Sisi from Egypt has already established a strategic role with New Delhi, and President Sisi will be in New Delhi in January, the third week of January. And Israeli, of course, don't forget about Israel. It has already a very deep collaboration with India. They have already opening. The American Jewish Committee has already opened, office there. So it's a little bit, could I say, a little bit sad, because Greece, under this government or the previous government did not push the Indian-Greek collaboration in many areas, not only security, but in a trade relation and so on. I think we are behind on this sector right now, even though Greece, speed up by sending military attaché to New Delhi without receiving an Indian attaché to Athens. But I think sooner we are going to have that. So Cyprus, Greeks, and the Indian collaboration is not just a luxury; it's a necessity. It's a necessity, but the reason that we can focus is on, of course, on the security. I think the Greek security intelligence community, because I'm specialized on counterintelligence, counterterrorism in the region, the Greek defense and security community could open a strong collaboration with the Indian security and intelligence community, the so-called ROW, which is very professional, of course, but on the other side, Cyprus must be in the circle. I know that the Indians are very quite interested to open some business in Cyprus about LNG, but India, could be in the Eastern Mediterranean, collaborating with the East Med Forum. The East Med Forum, of course, is as an alternative to the Russian monopoly regarding, the gas. So India could be like an observer there, all right, across, all the countries, Greece, Egypt, so far, Israel, and so on. So this collaboration must be supported, by think tank like the one we are working today, by having extensive universities also to have scholars from one place to another. We need to use some soft diplomacy. So diplomacy is us. That's exactly what we are doing today. Let's give us, the private sector. Let's give us, the think tank. Let's give us, any kind of soft diplomacy we can. And of course, the government must follow us. But as you know, and ambassadors know better than me, sometimes bureaucracy is really tough to move from one place to another. Of course, Mr. Nikos Delias, who's the Greek, foreign ministry, is pushing a lot just to explore the collaboration between the two countries. But sometimes it's not only one-man show. The government should go there. And I really, want to see, and I'm quite surprised to see, the president of the Greek Republic, the prime minister of the Greek Republic, to visit New Delhi as soon as possible. Because India is not just a country, it's a country that could assist the stability in the Eastern Mediterranean. It could assist the countries, Greece and Cyprus. Cyprus is a priority number one right now. Like Greece, to be in the Eastern Mediterranean, to have a joint exercise between India, Cyprus, and of course, Greece. Armenia has already joint exercise with Cyprus. Armenia is a country, very important right now because of the geographical reason. So India and Armenia, Greece and Cyprus, and of course Israel. Let's put Israel in the circle to be more active as we can. Erevan is a country that we need to, to invest because Armenia right now has a very strong diaspora in the United States, in France. I'm a man of diaspora. I grew up and live in the United States. So never underestimate the role of diaspora. The Armenian diaspora, the Greek diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, could I say the Kurdish diaspora, could work together, and India be like a catalyst in the equation to support each other. All right. So Armenia has a strategic role to play because not only of the geography, because of the culture, because of their forces. They have done that with the Cypriots. We are very close, at least in culturally, historically, and some defense collaboration with the country. But Armenia is, like I said before, a catalyst in the chemical equation. So like, the ambassador said, which I agree with his comment, even though I was listening to him through in my car, I could possibly say that this initiative that Paul and my colleagues took over could continuously in the future, because it's like the foundation of a strong cultural, historical, security collaboration between the Armenia, between the India, between Greece, between Cyprus, and I could put, like I said again, in the triangle, the Israeli diaspora and the Israeli collaboration that they have already developed strongly with New Delhi. So thank you very much. I just try to be on the focus. I don't like to waste the time. I'm sorry for the inconvenience to be, but like I said, just returning from Bosnia and Serbia. And again, besides our today, topic, I could possibly say to you that we need as much stability in the Eastern Mediterranean, because the Balkan volcano might be explode if we're not careful, to see how the situation is there. But anyway, Paul, thank you very much for having me, for everyone, and just I'm staying here for any kind of question we have at the end of the forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nomikos, for your wonderful insight, and especially for your warning about what could potentially happen in the former Yugoslavia, which could have a knock-on effect in the Eastern Mediterranean. Professor Nomikos also stressed that within our trilateral cooperation, we cannot forget Cyprus, which should actually make it as a multilateral cooperation rather than a trilateral cooperation. He also stressed that Navy cooperation is of critical importance between our countries, and even mentioned Egypt and Israel important in such initiatives, including with the Diaspora. He also proposed India to become an observer to the East Mediterranean Forum, an important international organization of East Mediterranean countries. He also said that India has an important role in peace and stability in the East Med. He stressed that think tanks, such as his own based in Athens, RIAS, and the New Delhi-based Red Lantern Analytica, and the network state for the Armenians must join in collaborations, and as well amongst other institutions. Now I'd like to welcome Michael Nezisyan, a British Armenian journalist based in the UK. He will discuss Armenia's and Armenians' potential role in a triumvirate between Greece, Armenia, and India. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks very much, Paul, and everyone at Red Lantern Analytica for organizing this. Just to follow on from some of the things John said really quickly, I think everybody realizes that the world changed with the Russia-Ukraine war, and the relatively stable structures we had, relatively stable alliances we had prior to that have all gone sort of out of the window. And you have these very strange alliances now, strange, countries that have lined up against each other. One of the ones that, strikes me as particularly strange, and John's comments reminded me of it, is Israel and Azerbaijan's extremely close relationship, which most likely, and I think everybody agrees more or less, is directed against Iran. And Armenia is sort of the side effect, the negative side effect for Israel, which seemingly it doesn't matter to them too much. But on the flip side, the very difficult relationship Israel and Turkey have, quite hostile even a lot of times. And yet Turkey and Azerbaijan are extremely close allies. And how does that work? And I think you've got a lot of these complicated triangles, squares and pentagons of alliances and conflicts. And the difficulty is that figuring out where the strategic points converge and where they digress between these countries. And we're talking here today between Greece, India, and Armenia, and I think because within these three there is a clear link where almost all of the strategic points converge, and everybody has an interest in the well-being of the other one, and there's no side effect, like I said about let's say the Israel and Azerbaijani alliance within us. Now, beyond that, I think there's two other points that it's worth highlighting, and I'd actually call them as facts. I think it's important to note that both, all Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Pakistan, they're all expansive. None of them are passive, and it matters. It matters because it changes what we have to do and what we can do. If they decide, for example, that actually, why are we causing conflict in the Aegean Sea? Why are we causing conflict in Artsakh or, Kashmir or wherever else? Why are we sponsoring terrorism in India? They can do that. Everything stops, conflict pretty much ends, and everybody goes on with their lives. We don't have that luxury. And by we, I mean Greece, Armenia, and India. Our options are limited to either giving in or reacting, or doing something about it. The second point is that those three countries we talked about, they are working together. I mean, we've called it a caliphate, but whatever name you put on it, the facts are that they are very closely cooperating with each other. And that's politically, economically, and militarily. Now, Pakistan was involved in the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. It wasn't as involved as Turkey, but I think it's quite clear that if the need came, they would have been. There were, if you want to call them reserves, you can call them reserves. And they were there. So, the point from that is that it's not isolated conflicts. It's not Armenia versus Azerbaijan. It's not Greece and Turkey. It's not Pakistan and India. There is a line that connects all three. And I think we need to take each other's conflicts seriously, each other's problems seriously. They may not hurt individually as much as our own conflicts, let's say, but they do matter in the grand scheme of things. And if you ignore one problem, then it's actually going to come back and bite you. So we should all be involved in each other's issues and help as much as we can. Now, that doesn't mean that we are all equal, quite obviously. Quite obviously, in terms of militarily and economically, Armenia is the junior partner. It needs support, especially now, from the, I don't know if you want to call them bigger brothers or whatever you want to call them, from Greece and India. It needs support. Politically, it's actually not as weak as it might seem. The Armenian government is, but in terms of the diaspora, Armenia is actually, Armenians, let's say, are actually quite influential. In the US elections, in the midterm elections, I think we saw very, very good cooperation between the Greek and Armenian diasporas in some of the constituencies. I had a quick look before, just briefly preparing for this. Interestingly, the Armenian and Greek diasporas are roughly the same size. I haven't done any analysis in terms of influence, but I think it's going to be the same, more or less. The Indian diaspora is obviously bigger. There's more Indians around. But the Indian diaspora compared to, let's say, the Armenian diaspora, it's about 4 to 5 times more. But once you compare the populations of India and Armenia, then actually, as a percentage, that's very substantial. And the point is that diaspora, the Armenian diaspora, can play a big role in this. and it can bring a very big benefit if pulled together with the Indian diaspora, with the Greek diaspora. And this goes back to a point that Bahram was talking about bringing the diasporas together and having a strategic platform where they can cooperate with each other and support each other, and for it to be sustained and not just ad hoc for certain issues that pop up occasionally. For Armenia itself, right now, the main problem is quite obviously military. I've covered many topics on this. It's multi-sided, but actually relatively simple. For the Azerbaijani leadership, the issue is twofold. One, they are self-serving and very narrow in terms of their interests, and they seemingly have very little interest for the actual Azerbaijani people in improving their lives. And they are very aggressive and expansive, and I don't know if their leader now considers himself as Napoleon or something like that. But they are moving forward. They're inching forward. Armenia is vulnerable, but it is geographically extremely important. And I apologize, I don't remember who said this. I think it might have been John that talked about Armenia's role. Maybe it was Abidjan. I apologize. And as a catalyst in this, but I think that's correct. If you look at it even geographically, you have Greece, you have India on either side, and you've got tiny little Armenia. And while it is not, it's not a major barrier for them, they can go around it, quite obviously. It is a thorn in both their sides. And when you look at it, the first thing that they will have to, let's say, deal with is Armenia. But once they do deal with Armenia, I think there should be no doubt that the next targets, the next points of expansion are going to be Greece and they're going to be India. So I think it's very, very much in the interests of both Greece as a nation, as a diaspora, as a people, as a patriotic, movement, and India, under all the same terms, to support Armenia right now, to make sure it doesn't, that flame doesn't disappear. It carries on. Because like I said, once it goes, that's it. Specifically, I'm talking about militarily right now. Unfortunately, Armenia is not in a position where it has the finances to support itself and to, buy the kind of tech and equipment and things that it needs. And I hope that there is enough wisdom in the leadership of the other countries that support Armenia to realize that actually in this moment you need a sort of US-Ukraine, West-Ukraine type relationship with Armenia, where you support them and you put the other considerations next. I'm talking about financial and economic. Unfortunately, one of the hurdles in all of this is Armenia's leadership. And I don't want to make this particularly political. And I remember Leonidas talking about that the Greek government right now is not so interested in pushing the civilizational project forward and the movement forward. Well, it's, for us Armenians, especially in the diaspora, it's a bit confusing what our leadership is actually pushing, if anything. It's very docile. It's very passive in its approach, in its alliances, in its build-up. And the conclusion from this is that we have to do it in spite of them. So we have to, again, going back to what Bahram said, whether it's a international diasporas movement network that we create, that we already present the solutions. It's obviously the place of government to present these solutions and everybody else to go along with it. But if they are not doing it, I think we have to take the responsibility on ourselves to come up with the solutions and present the final, final verdict or the final, result to them and say, this is what has to be done. And yeah, I think those are the main things I wanted to talk about. I think it's important that the relationship between Greece, Armenia, and India is strengthened. Like I said at the beginning, there is a lot of confusing webs of alliances and sort of adversaries. And these are the three where there is a very clear link between them, both today in terms of interests, and also, like we were talking about, historically and as civilizations going back, there is a link. And I think there is a natural affinity between the people. I don't know what it's like in the Indian diaspora. I imagine it's similar in the Greek diaspora, but definitely in the Armenian diaspora. When you see another Armenian abroad, when you meet and you find out it's an Armenian, it's like getting a present. It's like, wow, you know, you open it up. You might not like the present afterwards, right? But at first it's like, wow, you know, oh, you're from Armenia. And it means something, and it's an emotional connection. And I think the connection that we have between the three peoples is an emotional connection apart from a strategic and practical connection, which it also is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very deep insight. You highlighted that the Israel-Azerbaijan relationship, which is mostly aimed at Iran, but it does make Armenia caught in the crossfire as one of these strange alliances appearing in the modern era, especially since the Ukraine war. Mr. Nesassian also stressed Pakistan was involved in the 2020 invasion of indigenously Armenian Nagorno-Karabakh and would have been more so if they were requested to. He also stressed that Greeks, Armenians, and Indians must learn about each other's issues in the Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus, in Nagorno-Karabakh, and in Jammu and Kashmir much more deeply. He also stressed the diaspora as filling the void of the states who in his view are not making, or perhaps are not making, solutions to issues that our countries and people are facing. So we must certainly fill that void. Before I introduce us to our next speaker, I'm just saying that we've got 2 more speakers left. So if anyone has any questions, please send them through and we'll do our best to address them after our final 2 speakers. So I'll now welcome Dr. Swazi Rao, an Associate Fellow at the Europe and Eurasia Center at IDSA. She will be discussing India-Greece Defense Cooperation under India's new reforms and India's presence in the Caucasus by giving weapons to Armenia. So thank you very much, Doctor.
Well, thank you so much. I hope I'm audible to everyone. So a very good evening to everyone who's joining from India, and good morning and good afternoon to wherever you're joining in the world from. Thank you, Red Lantern Analytica, Abhishek, for this opportunity. And also, let me congratulate you for touching upon an issue which is not very popular, at least in Indian strategic thinking. Okay, and also let me congratulate the other speakers who came before me. I will be drawing a lot on what Michael said, whose presentation I just heard, and it was a brilliant presentation, but everyone's, because they touched upon various aspects of things that I would like to perhaps touch upon, but I wouldn't have the time to. So let me then begin. You see, the thing is that because there's paucity of time, I'll try to be as crisp as possible. But first, let me tell you that since I work on the Europe and Eurasia Center, I do look at the conflict in the Caucasus and the Western Balkans, and how are they related with what is happening in Ukraine and the overall security architecture and dynamics of Europe and Eurasia, and also the Caucasian region. So I am sort of going to be speaking from that perspective. I see a lot of people who are from those regions, so it'll be a pleasure to sort of hear back your feedback on the same. But with that, let me just sort of build on a couple of things, and then I'll start talking about what I have to say. The first thing I would like to say at the outset is that there is a genuine need for the people, for the government, between these countries, among these countries that we are talking about today, to better understand each other, right? I mean, I fully agree with what Michael said, that there is a major information asymmetry when we are talking about how to build cooperation, right? I mean, at any level, at the diaspora level, at economic level, or the defense level that I'll be taking up. Okay, so there is somehow, if you look at it from India's perspective, when we look at Europe, perhaps the most that we are looking looking at is, defense cooperation with France and now Germany, and only the major players, right? A bit from, say, the Czech Republic in terms of Tatras. We get our Tatras from there. So I think that particular problem has to be overstepped. We need to sort of address this information asymmetry. We hardly know about each other's problems. I mean, let alone an analyst like us who understand what is the Greece-Turkey clash over the gas fields, etc. But if you look at the by and large mainstream Indian strategic thinking, it still does not figure in. And it is extremely important for so many reasons that panelists before me have pointed out. So with that, one submission, let me now begin as to what my presentation is going to be, about. So I think I have about 8 to 9 minutes left. I'll time myself so that, I make sense. So first of all, what I've done is that I have outlined certain factors that are driving this particular relationship. In many ways, I'll be drawing upon what panelists before me have already spoken, but then I have my own analysis of the same. And then I'll be talking about how do we build this cooperation. And on that note, I would be talking about the defense cooperation, particularly the defense industry cooperation, because that is one area that I really work on. So, well, the first thing is that, yes, there is Turkey's Islamic nature. I mean, we all know Turkey and Pakistan are brothers, but Turkey and India could be friends. So we all know that. That definitely is a driving factor. The second of definitely is the Greece-Turkey clash over the gas fields in the Mediterranean that makes Greece so wary of, Turkey's designs. The third definitely is the Armenia-Azerbaijan war over Nagorno-Karabakh, where we saw that Armenia is being supported by Russia, though Armenia is not happy with Russian support. It is a CSTO member, but Armenia is really wary of how Russia is playing all sides. Whereas in terms of Azerbaijan is supported by Turkey and also Pakistan. And therein comes this really critical factor of Israel, because, Michael also put out how as to Israel is a Israel has good defense cooperation with Greece. At the same time, when it comes to Armenia, Azerbaijan, it sides with the Azerbaijanis. So, that is also something that we need to take care of. And then as to how Russia is actually sort of after the Ukraine war is coming up in that geostrategic worldview, in the Caucasian geostrategic worldview. So that is the third factor. The fourth thing that I'll be talking about is the Pakistan-Turkey growing cooperation, and I'll be touching upon a few things. And then, of course, I'll be talking about how India and these different countries, and particularly I'm talking about India and Greece defense cooperation ties. So first, let me just tell you a little things that I understand about how Armenia and the Azerbaijan wars have led to a bit of a problem with the Russian geostrategic worldview there, because you see the problem that I saw was that you see Armenia was backing on Russia's weapons and Russia's support. CSTO did not support there. Russia did support, but Russia was at the same time supporting Azerbaijan as well. And basically Armenia is increasingly, as time is passing, and Armenia is becoming very unhappy with how Russia is playing all sides at the Caucasus. So it's also selling arms to Azerbaijan, etc. And there have been some analysis recently as to Armenia could be tilting a little bit, towards NATO. I mean, there's still a lot of ground to be covered. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to sort of make a decisive statement there, but then I did read some analysis where it said that Armenia could be having a kind of a tilt, towards NATO because of its dissatisfaction with CSTO and Russia, and it could be, lending a kind of a covert support to Ukraine as well. Now, just coming to India, I think India out there, at least in the Ukraine crisis, we've been calling for de-escalation. But when you look at the crisis in the Caucasus, I think India is having a very realist, point of view there, because Armenia and India are both having a mutual concern about the emerging axis between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Pakistan, and it's been there since 2020. So India has inked a deal with Armenia. We've been trying to send them the indigenously made Pinaka rocket launchers and other ammunition. And even in 2020, we sold them the Swati weapon locating radars, which were worth about 350 crore. So, I mean, India is there. Now, you could perhaps say that India's presence isn't really as much, but then in my opinion, it will be something like, it is better to sort of, something is better than nothing. So it could be baby steps, but India is sort of, not letting that vacuum completely fall, to Pakistan's advantage. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. And then the second thing is, of course, the Pakistan-Turkey growing cooperation. I mean, it's very, very clear. It's one of the reasons why we're all together. But for example, you know, whether it's about the nuclear missile technology, whether it's about you know, their military exercises like Ataturk, for example, or Pakistan buying the ships or the helicopters from Turkey, and Turkey support to Kashmir, etc. So these are the reasons, of course, why, you know, that India actually keeps in mind when we are looking at this particular situation in the Caucasus, particularly with respect to Greece and Armenia. Now, coming to the main thing is that when you sort of look at this particular background and these critical drivers or the factors, what is it that we should be doing? So one of the things is that we should be trying to sort of fill in the information asymmetry, of course. The second thing, and which I am going to be talking about today, is about how do we cooperate better on our defense cooperation, right? And the defense industry cooperation. And therein, I'll be a little technical now. You see, one of the things that India has been doing is that India has had two extremely important reforms in our defense acquisition procedure. And those reforms, particularly in the year 2016 and 2020, they have been giving a direction as to how the defense cooperation of India should be advancing. So, for example, the 2016 defense acquisition procedure had something called a defense offset policy. And the defense offset policy, and there's a reason why I'm mentioning this, because you see Greece also relies, the Greece defense industry production also relies a lot on the defense offset policy out there. So that is the link that I'm trying to make in terms of India's defense offset policy and Greece's defense offset policies. Okay, so India is being very clear on that. And then what it basically says is that whenever we have a defense manufacturing project, for purchases over rupees 2,000 crore, a foreign company has to ensure that 30% of it is domestically value added in India, right? And similarly, we have something called a defense acquisition procedure in the 2020, which was the second attempt by the Modi government to streamline India's defense procurement system and promote Make in India, etc. And even the DAP puts more emphasis on how to sort of, focus on indigenously made content in procurement, and, how to sort of go for faster acquisition, etc. Now, the question is that after the Russia-Ukraine war, it's become pretty clear that, Russia may not be in the best position to deliver, the weapons, or perhaps the way the Russian weapons have been performing also sort of raises an issue about, India's diversification. And I think it's come in pretty timely. And not just the Russia-Ukraine war. Let me tell you that the India defense, reforms actually came before the war. So, like, for example, the one that I'm talking about is 2016 and 2020, and the war happened 2022, right? So, what I'm saying is that India is already moving in that direction, and what the Russia-Ukraine war has done has kind of accelerated that direction a little bit. So, what I look at, when it comes to defense, how do we build our defense ties, is that I look at what can Europe, really try and fill that void of being a defense partner. And of course, I'm not going to be talking about France, because it's pretty much established that India-France defense cooperation is quite good. But what about Europeans as a whole? There are certain problems when it comes to Europe's. That the one thing is that, Europeans never really finish as the lowest bidders a lot of times in Indian contracts. And on the contrary, Russia does. So I think Europeans also have to come out of that lowest bidder mindset. And then also with respect to, because there is now, when we talk about defense cooperation, I think in any country, and I think in Greece also, because I was reading some literature there, and even there, I think the idea is to go beyond, the buyer-seller relationship and go for better TOT or joint productions, etc. So whenever it comes to joint production, you see, one of the problems that Indian sector faces is that, Russians actually give us a lot of flexibility when it comes to joint production, right? But when it comes to other Europeans, they do not really give us that kind of flexibility. So what usually happens is that India finds it very difficult, because of our MOD, the rigidity at the level of our MOD, etc., to go ahead with those programs, because even though they sort of get those contracts. The problem comes when it comes to sort of deciding the modus vivendi of how to go about the joint production. So these are issues that we do face, and I mean, that is something that of course the Greek would also understand, because they also face similar issues, but then I'll come to it later. So what I'm saying is that India is sort of having these kind of factors flagged when it comes to how to go about developing our defense cooperation. And like I said, that joint production and TOT is definitely key. And then we also want better indigenization. Okay, so how can private players play a better role, etc. So I mean, I would love to have questions on it, because I have a lot of case studies worked out in the case of Europe about how can we better deliver on this part at least. And I have, for example, really worked on how the Czech Republic gives us Tatras, and how the Indian conduits step in, and indigenization happens according to the TAP guidelines, etc. But at the level of India, there's efficient coordination which is lacking. Of course, at the level of MOD, which is our Ministry of Defense, we require more resilience, we require more flexibility, etc. And when we look at Europe, it's pretty fragmented. Our defense cooperation with Europe is pretty fragmented if you leave out France. Now, coming to why am I mentioning it again and again? Because when I looked at the Greece defense industry, the Greece defense industry is also having something called the Defense Industry Directorate, which is DID, and it is an advisory body for the Ministry of National Defense, which formulates and implements national policy towards enterprises that are engaged in defense manufacturing. So this DID in Greece constitutes the connecting link between the armed forces and the defense industries, etc. And just like in India, they also have offset requirements, and these offset requirements continue to play an extremely important role in contract award processes. Like I said, here when you want a contract, I mean, now we have very clear-cut guidelines under the defense offset policy. Okay, so, and for many years, when you look at Greece, Greece was also a country that was only importing high-tech weaponry from abroad, and look at India. India was also one of the biggest importers of high-tech weaponry. In fact, Greece was one of the biggest importers of armaments in the EU between 2007 and 2012, here I'm looking at Cyprus data. So then the Greek debt crisis, etc. happened, but still, the Greek defense industry was really performed pretty well in July 2021 at the defense exhibition, there. And they kind of displayed their made in Greece weaponry and all that. And alongside other exports from Israel, they also reached several deals with foreign customers, okay? And this is a turnaround that kind of coincides with Greece's rearmament program because of tensions with Turkey. Okay, so I mean, that is the background to it. Now, the thing is that let's look at two of the Greece's major defense partners. It's Israel and France. And look at India's major defense partners. It's also Israel and France. So, I mean, I'm just trying to argue for this particular commonality, which can be better explored. Okay, on the one hand, and then you have to map more convergences. That's one. And like recently, Greece has inked a major deal with France, etc. Now, in terms of problem, and I know I'm overshooting time, but I'll just talk about one particular issue, and I'll end, which is that with respect to the performance of the offset policy. In India, the offset policy is not really working the way it was planned. Okay, and there is a lot of criticism which comes around when on working on the ground of that offset policy. Similarly, in Greece. Right, I mean, the offset policy is not really working well enough. So what I want to sort of end my presentation today with is that, of course, there are drivers that are sort of bringing the regions together. There is a kind of a merging of these security theaters because of these common problems that we are facing. I mean, that's one. The second thing was that what really can be done. One was definitely to work at the information asymmetry, and I didn't go into the details of it because my panelists before me had already gone into it. That was the first thing. And the second thing, because that is something I work on, which is how to better our defense cooperation. And yes, there have been talks, there have been all of that, but if we want to sort of go beyond the typical buyer-seller relationship, okay, of buying a few guns here and exporting a few guns there, I think what we really need to look at is how we are formulating a defense offset policies, for instance, and if there are problems in the defense offset policy, because there are so many commonalities that I just listed out for you, as to how can we then sort of go beyond it, how can we better map our convergences, and how can when we, especially because because India is looking at Europe in a big way and Greece is looking at India in a big way. So I think these are some of the issues that I flagged as important. And one of the reasons why it has not really been able to take off is because of that information asymmetry at all levels. So with that, I would rest my case, and I'm looking forward to more questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swasti Rao, with the deep analysis where you highlighted that Greece and India have defined defense manufacturing policies, with India having particular incentives to make indigenously made equipment. However, the professor also stressed that the European Union as a whole should look for cooperation with India, as only the Russians in Europe are taking advantage of cooperation with India in the military industry. She also mentioned commonalities in the Greek and Indian military industry, particularly cooperation with France and Israel. And they say this both with both countries using Rafale fighter jets in their air forces. I'll now pass on towards our final speaker, Uzay Bulut, who is a journalist from Turkey. She's currently a PhD candidate and research fellow at the Philos Project. She'll be talking about the ethnic cleansing and violent Islamification of Cyprus.
Yes. Hello, Paul. Hello, everyone. I'm so grateful to be joining you today on this webinar. We don't have much time left, so I will just start I actually prepared a short presentation, but I won't be able to show it to you on Google Meet. I didn't know that was technically not possible, but I'll still go through it. And yes, my topic is ethnic cleansing and violent Islamization, the case of Cyprus. Other participants, our friends on this webinar, talked about Artsakh and Armenia and Azeri and Turkish attacks and threats against Armenians. I think when we talk about the jihadist and pan-Turkist threats or attacks against Armenians or Greeks or Pakistani threats against India, I think we should definitely remember what's going on in Cyprus. That's why my topic is Cyprus and the violent Islamification of the Turkish occupied area of Cyprus. So first, let me give you some very brief historical background information about the invasion of Cyprus. In 1974, Turkey invaded the Republic of Cyprus twice, on the 20th of July and on the 18th of August. What followed was ethnic cleansing through forcible displacement. Turkey displaced the indigenous Greek Cypriots from the island's north in a violent ethnic cleansing campaign, accompanied by murders, rapes, forced disappearances, and other atrocities. All these crimes are well documented, and one of the significant documents or sources that I would like to urge you to read is a report adopted by the then European Commission of Human Rights, a body of the Council of Europe, in 1976. This report is available online, and it contains many details about all these crimes committed during the military invasion campaign by Turkey against Cyprus. So, as I just said, what happened was forcible displacement. Turkey has forcibly occupied 36% of the sovereign territory and 57% of the coastline of the Republic of Cyprus since 1974. The ethnic cleansing of northern Cyprus by Turkey has resulted in the displacement of more than or around 170,000 Greek Cypriots, or roughly 1/3 of the island's population. In addition to Greek Cypriots, Armenian, Maronite, and other non-Muslim Cypriots were also forcibly displaced. The result was that Turkey effectively crushed the Christian population. And today, the capital of the Republic of Cyprus, Nicosia, which is 35% occupied by Turkey, is the last divided capital of Europe. So Turkey has been committing many crimes in the occupied area, including ethnic cleansing, cultural cleansing, and forcible displacement. Turkey has implemented policies meant to erase the Hellenic and Christian identity and civilization of occupied northern Cyprus. The occupied area has been mostly Turkified by the influx of illegal settlers from Turkey and around 40,000 Turkish armed soldiers illegally deployed in the country. The original names of geographical locations, such as towns and villages, have been illegally Turkified. And also, the cultural and religious heritage of the occupied area has been systematically targeted by Turkey and the occupying regime there. The Greek and other non-Muslim cultural heritage of the occupied area has largely been subjected to systematic annihilation. Historic churches, chapels, and monasteries have been subject to desecration and destruction. They've been pillaged, deliberately vandalized, and in some cases demolished. And innumerable cultural and religious artifacts have been stolen to be illegally transferred to different countries around the world and sold. Well, in my presentation, I have some pictures to show you, but I can't, but you can still Google the cultural heritage destruction or the destruction of churches in the occupied area of Cyprus, and you could see tons of examples, tons of pictures of destroyed or damaged churches, monasteries, and even cemeteries. The representation of the Church of Cyprus to the European Union reports that all cemeteries in the occupied area have been ravaged. The cemeteries of that's what the report says. The cemeteries of our ancestors have been looted and destroyed. Graves have been opened and crosses and gravestones have been broken. And yes, pictures, I'm not going to be able to show them to you. And I think at this point we need to remember links between cultural heritage destruction and mass atrocity crimes. Deliberate destruction of cultural and religious heritage is often intimately connected to a deliberate strategy to perpetrate mass atrocity crimes. I'd like to quote the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect organization. They report that as culture constitutes an intrinsic part of an identity of a people, an attack on cultural heritage could consequently be an attack on the very identity of a group and its right to exist. The systematic destruction of cultural heritage often aims at demolishing a targeted group's history and symbols, undermining their cultural continuity, and may have the intention of erasing any historical trace that these communities existed. So when we look at the occupied area in Cyprus, northern Cyprus, that is illegally occupied by Turkey, we see that even cemeteries belonging to Greeks and other Christians and Jews have been systematically destroyed or largely damaged. So we see that Turkey and its occupying regime there has no tolerance or respect even for dead people. And what is the goal for that? What is their goal? I think the goal seems to be that they have the intention of erasing any historical trace that Greeks and other non-Turks lived in that area. Currently, beside the ongoing Turkish occupation, I think there are three enormous threats that the Republic of Cyprus is facing today. I'd like to mention them very briefly and quickly. The first one is demographic alteration through mass illegal immigration. This has been in the news for years now, I think since maybe 2016. The Republic of Cyprus is increasingly struggling with a massive wave of illegal migration from Turkey, the Middle East, and Africa. The Cypriot government says that Turkey is orchestrating this illegal immigration crisis as most migrants coming to Cyprus travel from Turkey. They reportedly fly from Istanbul or Ankara to the Turkish-occupied north of Cyprus, are then smuggled to the free southern part of the Republic of Cyprus, and from there, under EU law, they can apply for asylum. So this has been ongoing for years now, and the Cypriot government officials say that the situation is completely out of control, and even the European Union has acknowledged the problem, calling it the weaponization of migration by Turkey. So this is a huge threat Cyprus is facing today. Another threat is, according to Turkish news reports, Turkey is planning to construct a military naval base in the Carpathian Peninsula in the Turkish-occupied north. And this is another sign for Turkey's attempts at further militarization of the occupied area, which will definitely decrease the safety and security of the whole island and of the whole region. Another very important development and a real threat that Cyprus is faced with is the Turkish nuclear power plant under construction at Akkuyu, Mersin, southern Turkey. So there's a nuclear power plant, in a city on the Mediterranean shore in Turkey, and it's being built right now, and it's expected to start operating next year, sometime in 2023. In case of a nuclear accident or a failure of safety systems, not only the area of Akkuyu would be in danger, but also Cyprus and the whole of the region, including the Southeast Mediterranean region, of course. And on the 11th of March, the Cyprus anti-nuclear platform issued a statement regarding the risk from the ongoing construction of Akkuyu nuclear power plant on the southern coast of Turkey. And this is a small part of their statement. They said the impact of a failure in the safety systems of the plant or an earthquake represents a high risk. The consequences will inevitably be catastrophic for Cyprus, which is located much closer to Akkuyu than Ankara. Our region is politically unstable, and this significantly increases the risks. Furthermore, even the everyday operation of a nuclear plant represents a danger for human beings, aquatic life, and the environment in general due to the disposal of radioactive waste and the thermal pollution of seawater. So this is what's been going on in Cyprus briefly. So all these crimes, including the ethnic cleansing through forcible displacement, started in 1974, and it's been ongoing for 40 years. But 2 years ago, 46 years after the Turkish invasion campaign of Cyprus, another ethnic cleansing campaign was committed by Azerbaijan and its ally, Turkey, against Armenians in Artsakh. So we see that we have two different regions, two different victim groups, and two different countries, but the same perpetrators, same goals, same motives, and same or similar crimes, similar atrocities. So because what Turkey has been doing to Cyprus is ongoing, and Turkey has faced no consequences for that, and the government of Turkey has never been held accountable for that, similar crimes are now being committed against Armenians of Artsakh, and actually the Armenians of the Republic of Armenia as well. So what are the motives of the perpetrators? Pan-Turkism, their desire to unite this so-called Turkic world from the Far East, including China, to the Balkans, to Europe, and of course their jihadist goals. And so my presentation was about Cyprus, because I think that the situation in Cyprus we should definitely remember the existential threats that Cyprus is facing, and Cyprus should definitely be part of this alliance between India, Armenia, Greece, and other nations that are threatened by jihadist governments in the region. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Uzay. You said that the Pan-Turk and Pakistani threat to Armenia, Greece, and India sometimes makes it easier to forget Cyprus, a country which faced two invasions in 1976 and whose citizens in the Northern Territories, or the occupied territories, were raped, looted, and ethnically cleansed. She also highlighted the cultural and historical artifacts which were stolen and sold or destroyed, including churches, monasteries, and cemeteries, something that Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and Hindus in Jammu and Kashmir can certainly relate to. Ms. Bullard also said that the goal of Turkey and Cyprus is to erase all Greek and non-Turkish heritage. This is in addition to a manufactured demographic crisis, which Turkey is weaponizing against Cyprus. As I said, an island country which has about 1 million citizens. She also highlighted the risk of Turkey's nuclear power plant currently being constructed, which is actually located closer to Cyprus rather than Ankara, and has immense risk. So I thank our final speaker. And before we move on, we're going to have one intervention from one of our panelists. Then we're going to have an extremely short Q&A session before we have the final vote of thanks. So I'll pass the microphone to our panelist, Abhijit.
Thanks, Paul. So, I just wanted to incorporate some of what Michael said very quickly. The diaspora idea is a fantastic idea. I think John Nomikos also raised it. The issue with the Indian diaspora, of course, is, we very frequently in India see them as our biggest enemy. You don't get a more anti-India bunch than the Indian diaspora. You find most of the crap written about India is done by the Indian diaspora. They really don't know how to strategize their voting in America or the UK. In the UK they did, but in America they still don't. Our big issue, Michael, you raised how the Armenian diaspora interact, even if you don't like the gift and all of that. The problem with the Indian diaspora is we can't forgive the world for not being white. We claim to be invaders 5,000 years ago from the steppes of Ukraine. Came in our horses and conquered the land of India about 5,000 years back. But we can never forgive the world for having been turned brown and not getting any of the advantages of being brown. So, we don't fall on the correct side of the woke divide and things like that. Because the Muslim population, if you look at it in America, has a very good way. So if you look at this entire issue of, gender training in Pennsylvania schools, Muslims are the ones who have sort of gone on the Republican side. And very strategically, they will also support people like Ilhan Omar and things like that, who are basically out and out jihadists. So with the Indian diaspora, that is not the case. Most Indian diaspora are very happy to just click a picture with the senator or congressman and things like that, and don't really engage much. The second issue that we face is, because of this need of validation, is there's a lot of Western media mollycoddling of Turkey and Islamic issues in general. Everything they do is fine, but India, there's apparently a genocide against Muslims happening, which nobody's actually seen. There is apparently, if you remember, there was virtually no attention given to Armenia or Azeri war crimes in Artsakh. Blatant, in-your-face video war crimes recorded, etc. And the second issue was, the point you raised about Israel and Iran and the Shia and the Sunni divide. For us, the big issue with bringing in Israel has been Israel's problem is with the Shia Hezbollah. The Sunni Hamas has mostly been contained. In India, there's not been a single Shia terror attack in 40, 50 years. Just one on the Israeli embassy, that too. There's never been a Shia terrorist caught. It's overwhelmingly Sunni terrorism. And if you look at Azerbaijan, I brought up this issue that they're overwhelmingly Shia, but they've been kind of de-Islamized by a few hundred years of Soviet rule. And they're kind of gravitating towards the Sunni thing. And you look at the general Sunni rapprochement happening, spearheaded by Saudi Arabia with Israel and things like that. The question really now is how India is not a viable supplier of arms, realistically speaking, of multi-dimensional arms. Neither is Greece. And the question is, how do we really help Armenia? Because militarily, it needs a lot of help. And there's simply no cutting-edge technology for either of these countries to provide. And French technology, with Swasti raised, is ruinously expensive. I don't think Armenia can afford it. So there's no real money to buy Western game-changing equipment. At the same time, Azerbaijan has a lot of gas revenue to buy game-changing equipment from the Israelis. How does this play into the whole Shia-Sunni divide, and how Israel and India play their cards in this remains to be seen. But that was a very interesting can of worms you opened up. I think we'll deal with it in another thing. So I'll finish here.
We've got, if you're available for another few minutes, Abhijit, we do have one or two questions directed your way. So could we please receive the question, if you're available, from Ani?
Sure.
Someone from the technical team, please unmute Ani if it's possible. Or if she's able to send the message through text.
Hello.
Perfect, we can hear you. Please continue.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to Bahram, I am here today. So maybe I should introduce myself. I am Ani. I am a PhD graduate from JNU, New Delhi, and I am an Armenian. I am a good example of a public diplomacy, maybe, between Armenia.
Sorry, just to interrupt,
I have a
Ani.
small intervention. I have so many
Sorry,
things
just
to say,
to interrupt for a moment, please. Is your question directed at Abhijit or not exactly?
I have a small intervention, so I will just be very brief.
That's fine. Please have your intervention, but we'll say good evening to Abhijit and we thank him for his time.
Great talking to all of you. Take care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, please continue.
What I should say initially is that the major issue, like we talked about everything, but I think that the issue is the lack of knowledge between Armenia and India. I will mostly talk about Armenia and India. Sorry if I don't touch upon Greece, because I have been living in India for a few years, so that's why. So the major issue is the lack of knowledge, because in both countries there is very less information about each other on the public level. I'm not talking about the governmental or on a higher level. But despite the fact that we are talking about the natural partnership that exists between Armenia and India, and what I think is that against this multidimensional threat, there should be like multidimensional cooperation between Armenia and India. And that does not necessarily include only defense cooperation. That is very much linked to the political cooperation and also, a partnership. And also, we should not forget about the communication networks, and especially this Chabahar port, which has also a very significant geopolitical importance for India. And the other thing is, and as for the diaspora that Bahram mentioned, it's a very ambitious. I think it's very ambitious to have that kind of perspective on both diasporas. But as Abhijit Mitra mentioned, so what I want to say is that Indian diaspora is maybe like numerically it's more than the Armenian diaspora, bigger with size, but it's not internally institutionalized. So it's not easy to have this cooperation India or Armenian between two diasporas. And the other thing is and the other thing is I would like to answer to Abhijit again. When he mentioned about the Armenia not being able to purchase military equipment from India, I would like to mention that this technological cooperation is very important. So what I mean is that Armenia can afford cooperating with India to produce military equipment. And a good example is like recently this Vikram S satellite, the rocket which was launched in India, which had payloads from Armenia also, laboratory in Armenia. So maybe that's it. I just wanted to make small interventions. No
problem.
Question.
No, thank you for the intervention and your insight, particularly as an Armenian woman studying in New Delhi. We're going to move to Kyriakos. Then we'll be having Mr. Ayvazian answering a question. Then Mr. Professor John Nomikos will be making the final contribution before we conclude things with a vote of thanks. So could we please have Kyriakos unmuted?
Okay, just to say good afternoon or good evening to all of you, and many thanks for giving me the opportunity to attend this very interesting meeting. it's the first time we join this project, and hopefully we could contribute to this. I thank Uzay for informing me about this. It's obvious that Cyprus has similarities and differences, but mainly similarities despite the difference in size with Armenia, with India. With India, we had the common characteristic of being in the past a colony, but colonization unfortunately left back some of the divide and rule tasks. We are very close with Armenians for 107 years now after the genocide. A number of Armenians are part of the Cypriot society. And with India, Cyprus and India were in the with Nehru and Nasser and this movement of non-aligned countries in those days. So, I thank Uzay for giving a comprehensive illustration of the main aspects affecting Cyprus. I listened with, I'm a little anxious about the Nomikos mentioned just earlier regarding bad news.
We apologize.
It's quite clear with respect to the limit of time, and thanks for having this first, let's say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kyriakos. Your connection was just cutting out a little bit towards the end there. I'm going to forward a question to Mr. Varam. The question is, ancient Greek medicine continues to live in India in the name of Unani. Armenians had trade relations with several parts of India, and by the 7th century, a few Armenian settlements had appeared in the present-day state of Kerala. What can be done by academicians and researchers like us to make these facts more well-known and drive a collective cooperation in binding all of us together against the caliphate terrorism?
Thanks a lot for the question.
If possible, could we reduce it to 2 or 3 minutes, if possible?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. That's a very important question. Actually, we at the Network State are working on this topic. The Armenian, we are in touch with a number of Indian think tanks on this Observer Research Foundation, Vivekananda Foundation, and we want to run a number of big projects related to civilizational dialogue and in the European civilizational roots, and we have some scientists involved in, and we have concluded that the ties between the Armenians and the Indians are not just in the 7th century, but prehistoric eras even, which can be found in Sanskrit writings and also in Vedas. So basically, we are in that, and you can get updates from the Network State website and from Network State social media channels. And for this, how to make it, known, the think tank, the scientist needs to be involved in it, but also this diaspora, as an organization, as an institutional establishment, this board needs to work towards that in order to push this project forward. We Armenians, Indians, Greeks, need to take that role of healing the world, because we are ancient civilization and the new guys are waiting for our wisdom. So historically, Armenians have been the communicators throughout history, communicating east and the west, north and south. So we are coming back to take that role. And the network is one of the key goals of the Network State is that. So that's why we are in touch with Indian think tanks, to bring this story of Armenian-Indian prehistoric communication and prehistoric ties together. If there will be more questions related to this, if there will be more, concerns, projects, or proposals, the Network State is here to serve. So you can go to our website and I mean, find details on that, but also you can connect with me or with anyone else in the network state. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Varam. I now pass us to the final intervention before the vote of thanks, and I'll pass it to Mr. Professor Nomikos.
All right, just very briefly, I had very carefully everyone, but I want to say, just a recommendation or a proposal. Sometimes the government are moving, but like I said, bureaucracy and the lack of flexibility create more obstacles than you can think. Now, living diaspora, I have studied, the methodology of the Jewish and the Armenian diaspora in Washington, D.C. And I would like to say, Paul, and to Mr. Rabjan, sometimes the decision makers receive a report from a think tank, especially the United States, is a reality. Why don't we think to create a short recommendation briefing jointly between Greece, Cyprus, India, Armenia, and some other country we could think, but it has to be short, not a big report. And I can guarantee to you, we could bring this short report to the decision maker in many think tanks, because think tanks has a very strategic role in many countries that goes to the decision maker. In the United States is a must. In UK is a must. Now in Greece is a little bit different, because some of the think tank in the Balkan states are subsidized and to some extent controlled by the state authority. I'm not saying all of them, but here is quite different. So Paul, we need to come up with a joint short brief report to the decision maker in many countries, what is going on in the region. And the second, very briefly, information and knowledge are power. Just to give you case studies, I want to highlight what Bulet said. There's a lot of discussion right now that Turkey is hosting, Hamas and so on. All right, this is open sources. I'm not saying that. But pragmatically and realistically, there is no doubt what I'm going to say, that the Turkish, and the Israeli intelligence community is collaborating, even though they have a lot of problem between the two countries, because they need the critical information from Israel, what's going on through Turkey to Iran. So what we see on the open sources and on the social media and what's happening in the intelligence community are two different scenes. So what I'm saying here, we are not state authority. We are think tank, but we have power. So we need to unite and join our knowledge and information to update and inform the decision makers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm doing that for 17 years. Believe me, technology is helping us to speed up the information to them. We don't need to see them face to face. We need to set the report. If they want to see us, they can invite us. Believe me what I'm saying. We can do more than you can imagine. India is a country of information technology. It can help us to speed up the process. Mr. Rajan, are you listening what I'm saying? Please, let's do it. Paul, let's do it. We can do many things. Here, united, we can support a lot of things. And let me tell you something about Turkey. Turkey, if it chosen to share critical information with the EU and NATO, because it's a NATO member, could prevent a lot of terrorist activities that come in because of the energy crisis, because of the food crisis, because of poverty, because of social turmoil. So what I'm trying to say, we need to join forces if we like to see 2023 not as a year of global recession, but provide as much, stability as we can, because it's going to be a difficult country. And what we're going to see in the Balkan, especially in the Kosovo and Mitrovica, could be a problem and could ignite Balkan and, spill over effect to the Eurasian, to the Middle East, to the North Africa, to everyone. So let's join forces and update decision maker, because believe me, they don't know what's going on in the region. We need to update them. Thank you very much.
I think perhaps one of the most important things that we can take away from today's session before I pass it on to our vote of thanks is that we don't just finish today's session and then we wipe our hands and then that's it, is that we do move some of these things forward. So Varam should definitely continue with his initiatives towards the diaspora, and the suggestions by Professor Nomikos that we must deepen think tank cooperation. However, not just to continue webinars like this, but to push it into reports that we can push into government policy and influential policymakers and whatnot. So Mr. Nomikos is, Professor Nomikos is absolutely correct. So such a report must be written and it must be disseminated amongst all governments and policymakers that we can within our respective countries. On that note, I'd like to pass on the vote of thanks to the Associate Fellow of the National Maritime Foundation in New Delhi, Sriyoshi Simya. So please continue with our vote of thanks. Perhaps from...
So due to certain technical reasons, he couldn't join us. So we have Senior Research Associate from Red Lantern Analytica, Mr. Siddharth. He will be joining us. He will be giving the vote of thanks. And definitely we will be reaching out to all the medias and even embassies with this, the document, the report of our today's webinar. We'll be reaching out to Armenian embassy. We'll be reaching out to Cyprus embassy. We'll be reaching out to Greek embassy in India. So thank you for this wonderful discussion. Now I invite Siddharth. Siddharthji.
I hope I am audible.
Yeah, you are
Thank you,
audible.
Mr. Abhishek. I'll take this opportunity to thank our expert resource person for this webinar, Leonidas, Ambassador ad horam and first Greek Ambassador to Armenia, Professor John M. Nomikos, Director, RIEAS, Behram Afzan, Founder and Board Chairman, Network Estate, Dr. Swati Rao from the Manohar Parikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, Abhijit Iyer Mitra from Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, Michael Nersian and Uzair Balu, both being journalists. And I'll also like to thank our moderator for this session, Mr. Paul Ethnopoulos, editor from the Greek City Times, and Dr. J. Jagannathan from Central University of Germany, for this highly informative session on Indo-Greek and Armenian strategic cooperation to tackle Caliphate design. Certainly, as pointed out by many of our speakers, India, Greece, and Armenia are ancient civilizations and are under danger from the Turkey-Pakistan-Azerbaijan nexus. And there must be a great effort in linking all of these ancient civilizations through diplomatic efforts as well as at the level of diaspora. I certainly hope that all the participants attending this session from Google Meet and YouTube Live must have learned immensely from the session, and I'd also like to thank our resource person for the great presentation over this subject. Also, I'd like to seek your pardon for any kind of errors that might have been committed during the event, and we look forward to better our efforts and to similar collaboration efforts between our organizations and our great countries. We certainly hope that a common board of individuals will be formed jointly, as suggested by Professor John Nomikos and Mr. Behram, where we can do our bit to integrate our civilizations. I'd also like to thank members from RIEAS, Network Estate, and Pericles Institute for collaborating for this webinar, and I hope this is one among the many sessions which we will be having on this particular topic. With these words, I thank the participants for their involvement, and on these words, I'd like to express once again our sincere thanks to all of us who have joined us today in this session, including our expert speakers. With your due permission now, Mr. Paul, we can bring this session to a close. Thank you.
Once again, thank you everybody and have the most wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.